Welcome back, everybody. I recently bought 17 different tool lots from a local estate auction. I figured I would break it up into a couple of different videos. Today we're going to cover these three boxes. Alright, first up is lot 564. 564 was mostly clamps and vice grips. I bought it for the vice grips mainly. I paid $27.50 plus fees. First out of the box, I'm seeing a number of these three-way clamps. Thinking they're Chinese specials. I don't see any names on them. There's 2, 3, 4. I think that's going to be it. So there's 4 of these three-way clamps in there. All right, next up I see this slightly modified vice grip. I did not see this in there when I bought it. I think I can just grind off the welds and it'll be a normal like panel clamp or whatever they call these. Hopefully there's not too many more modified ones in here that I didn't catch. Here's a 4-inch, probably Chinese. Here's a Texan 4-inch. Another Texan 4-inch. And then a 4-inch with no markings. The Texans are marked China as well. Even though some clamps are Chinese made, they still work. Still come in handy when you need them. This one is missing a little pad. It is an adjustable. Next one is a made in the USA 2-inch adjustable. I want to say all the ones I've seen that say adjustable are usually made in the USA, but could be wrong. This next one is a 3-inch malleable iron. And on the other side, I think it's marked B and C, if I'm reading that correctly. I'm seeing a couple more of these 2.5-inch adjustable. This one does have the pad. This next one's a 3-inch. And there's also another 3-inch in here. So I'll be keeping all these clamps. These are good clamps. And what do they say? He who dies with the most clamps wins. I think that's more of a woodworking thing, but this one has no name. I'm guessing it's Chinese. It's missing the pad. It's had its better days, so I think I'm going to toss that one. Also, I see there's this General Tools pipe cutter in here. And I don't see a name on it, but there's also a flaring, well, half of a flaring tool. Unfortunately, I didn't look real close at these when I bought it. The more I look at them, the worse they're getting. This one is a vice grips. The panel clamp. Looks like these are usually on on little hinges. It looks like someone welded the hinges. Apparently they didn't want them to be flexible. It's probably still usable like that. Looks like they did the same thing to this one. I don't know what all this black stuff is on here. I don't know if they were clamping something and spraying it with something that has some sort of coating, but yeah, I'm not really sure what that is. These are also welded. It also has, that other one had this like little piece on it as well. So apparently they like that better than the knob on the end to tighten it, because I don't think I've ever seen that on another one before. And yet another one with the welded ends. I hope all of them aren't this way, but if they are, I'll have to deal with it. They were hard to look at because the way they had them at the auction house, they were way in the back of a rack of tools. So without reaching back and pulling out a bunch of stuff, you couldn't really get to them. So I just figured they were normal vice grips that looked a little used up, but I think they'll still work just fine. Wish they weren't welded like they are. Here's a bit of a larger panel clamp. There's also 2 more C clamps in here. This is an adjustable. Looks like a 4-inch. And then one more 2.5-inch adjustable. Threads need a little cleaning, but I'm sure we could bring that back. And at first I thought this was a panel clamping vice grips, which I guess technically it is now. But it's just a regular vice grips with some little strap welded to it. I guess this is what happens when you don't look close enough, but at the same time, for what I paid for the box, I think it's still worth it. There'll still be enough good usable pieces coming out of here. Another pretty good sized panel clamp. And yet another one that's modified, but I think this end will come off pretty easy by grinding off the welds. Okay, the next lot up is going to be 523. 523 looked to be like a bunch of screwdrivers. I think it may be almost all screwdrivers. Nut drivers might be in there as well. And I paid $9 plus fees for this box. I do believe I saw a couple Snap-on screwdrivers in here, so I think it was well worth the $9. All right, so this first tool in here, which I'm thinking is somebody's homemade tool, which I could totally be wrong, but I'm thinking it's a homemade tool because of what it says here. It says Chelsea PTO control. Guessing that's a power takeoff control. So I don't know if this is just a handle for something else and somebody just put like some sort of hook on the end. I'm not sure, but seems like it's homemade. I have a very crusty nut driver in there. Also found a couple of Stanley Torx bit screwdrivers. This is a Popular Mechanics made in the USA flat tip. Not 100% sure what this one says. I think it says like Credo Commercial. Never heard of that. I don't know if that's a company or what, but that's a flat tip. I have an old Ace USA flat tip. I have an Ace Pro Series. Not seen any other markings as far as country goes. This is a big flat tip. There's also this Master Mechanics USA flat tip. I grabbed what I thought was all Stanley, but this first one has no markings. These are the old Stanley USA. This is another flat tip. Some of you might call them slotted, I guess, but I've always called them flat tip my whole life. But maybe it depends on where you're from or how you grew up. A few more of these really cheap nut drivers in there to go along with that first one that was all crusty. There's 4 of these very cheap looking screwdrivers. They almost look like Snap-on knockoffs, but well, this one's not a screwdriver. This one's more of a tack puller, which I'll keep that one. But the other ones look like they're garbage. There was this awl that matches that one that said commercial on it before. I think there's a couple more. And there's a couple more with that same marking. These are a couple of picks. There is a chisel in here, like a wood chisel. I thought at first it was a Stanley, but it actually has no markings at all that I can see. Next out of the box, we have an Artisan USA, little stubby Phillips. Then we have a stubby flat tip. I'm not seeing any brand on there, probably made in Taiwan or China. There's a very small flat tip that somebody ground down. This one's actually made in the USA. I don't see a brand on it, but probably came with like a little toolkit. And there's also this 1/8 Craftsman flat tip in there. I'm trying to determine if the end has been ground narrowed. Can't quite tell, but looks a little off for some reason. So I think that leaves us with just Snap-on. Some of these are a little used up and crusty, but here is a Snap-on stubby flat. The material on the handle here is definitely starting to break down. It's a Snap-on stubby Phillips. Next up is a much nicer condition Snap-on stubby Phillips. I'm seeing some SMP initials on these. Here's another Snap-on. This one's been burned. It's been ground. You know, why not grind up your Snap-on screwdrivers? Seems like a good idea. I will say that when I bought the tools I bought there, I knew they were rough. Whoever owned these, I would say didn't take the best care of them. Here's a number 2 Phillips Snap-on. Tip looks to be in pretty good shape yet. And we have another Snap-on. This is a big flat tip. Thinking the very end of it may be missing, reground. And this is a pretty good knockoff of a Snap-on flat tip. If we look at that other one, the previous one, the handle has the same basic shape. They both have the little hex at the end. They're the same length. But yeah, there's little differences. I don't know if I counted that one as Snap-on or not when I looked at it, but if I did, oh well. And the last one out of this box was another Snap-on flat tip, also kind of crusty. But you have to remember I paid $9 for this box with the fees, probably like $10.50 or something like that, maybe $11. So even if half of those Snap-on screwdrivers are good, and we don't even count anything else I pulled out of here, I paid like $3 a screwdriver. And then the last lot I bought is $6.30. This looked to be all wrenches. I paid $17.50 plus fees. Fees at this auction were like 13% plus, and then you paid 5.5% sales tax here. So $17.50 is probably coming out to somewhere around $22. I did preview these in person. Like I said, they were kind of hard to look at depending on where they were on their racking because they were stacking 3 or 4 boxes deep. Not the best setup. It's a auction that's a little, they're in a new location. I don't love it, but these seem pretty decent when I first picked them up. And not to say that they're not just because they're Pittsburgh, but yeah, they didn't seem too bad. So there's a set of those in here. I think they're metrics. Yeah, it looks like they're all metric. I don't think they came on this rack. They're actually really hard to get on and off of there, so I'll probably just hang them up on pegboard just to have something quick to grab. There was a number of different wrenches in here. No names I could see. These are Taiwan. These are some open end and then flare nut on the opposite side. I also noticed there was Craftsman in here. I think maybe a couple snap-on. Here's a Craftsman 11/16 raised panel. This is a made in USA wrench. It's actually in pretty good condition. See, there's another one of those Taiwan open end flare nut wrenches. Here's a 1" by 15/16 double open end Craftsman, the old V series. Pretty nice condition 3/4 Craftsman. Here's the first snap-on out of the box. This is a 3/4. Looks to be in pretty good condition. Many of the tools were engraved, but not this one. Here's a Craftsman 3/4 by 7/8 double open. Again, the old V series, and this is before they actually put the V on the panel. Sometimes they had the shank with a stamp in it, but I don't see one on this one. Here's a Taiwan open end. I think this is another Taiwan. Yep. Then we're back to Craftsman. This is the old 19/32 by 11/16 open end. Here's a Taiwan that matches the other one, so I have most of a set. I think a lot of people like these, that you can break the nut loose on one side and then make it a little quicker using the open end to take it off. And yet another one to that set. Here's a few miscellaneous stamped wrenches. I'm sure these are out of some sort of kit, saw, or something to change blades anyway. Not sure if this is a logo for a company or what that is. That looks to be the only one that has any markings on it. Well, it looks like I'm still not done with these. 1/2 inch. Let's see, is that a 8mm? I didn't even notice that some of the other ones may have been metric. And a 3/8. Well, the more I look, the more I find. Here's a 12mm, 10, and 5/16. I'll probably keep those in a spare toolbox just in case. There's this Williams super wrench in there. This is a 3/8. I think everything I have in my hand is Craftsman, so we'll run through those quick. Here's a 9/16. 1/4 inch. 12mm. All these are in really good condition. Guessing they weren't used very often. Another 1/4 inch. 3/8. 11/32. If that was 11/16, it's pretty small. 9mm. 5/16. 7/16. 8mm. 11mm. And the 10mm. So I think just in Craftsman wrenches, this box was worth what I paid. Of course, there was that first snap-on 3/4 inch. This one is a 9/16. And the last thing in this box is another snap-on wrench. And this one is 11/16. So that's going to be all for this one. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.